Well, Sam Clemens, old friend, you win this go-round. You cut a king to my jack, and so Mark Twain will have his interview with the U.S. Senator from the state of California. I was delayed at the barber's, of all places. I was described in the press by one of my political detractors as the worst-dressed member of the California delegation. Since my tailor's Floods of London, supposed to be the best in the world, I sent them the clipping. My wife, Phoebe, was furious, said I looked like Pioche, Nevada. Sent me off to have my beard trimmed. Hasn't been this short in 30 years. Well, I see you've helped yourself to a whiskey. Good. Well, there wasn't much time for politics back in the early days, and Virginia City was there, Sam. You were writing stories for the Territorial Enterprise for $25 a week. And I was trying to figure out a way to go deeper into the load without bringing the whole damn mountain down around us and still make $1. Yeah, those were the days. Well, Sam Clemens, I can recall the day that you snuck into my room to borrow my boiled white shirt. That was the best dressed you'd ever been in your life. Well, you know, it was my father back in Missouri taught me the workings of democracy. My father was a man of pretty good judgment and accumulated something. He was a lieutenant in the militia, went on all parades, and in all things evinced a public spirit. My mother was a woman of some education, taught me my letters at home, as there was very little schooling at that time. She always took the bright side of things and seemed always to be in a good humor. She was quite a good woman and was very hard to excite on any subject. But always kept a cool head and gave good advice. I think that I got most of my success from my mother. Of course, she always had a good deal to do, for a Western life in those days was very hard. There was very little help for her. There was always cotton to be raised and picked. There were sheep and goats to be tended to, and innumerable other things like sewing, weaving. Of course, my younger days were spent in a very wild sort of a way. We lived in a wilderness, and our surroundings were of the roughest sort. Osage Indians were around us in every direction. Every summer would come and visit us. Time and again, wolves would come to make off with our sheep and geese, which wool and feathers were required for our clothing and our feather beds. I was still a young man when my father died, leaving me to support my mother and my sister. I inherited considerable debt, as well as the most extensive mining properties and farming territory in that region, about 800 acres with 150 in cultivation. Of course, farming was such a slow way to make a living. You could make a living, but no money, and that's about all. I used to hear my father say that if he saved a few $100s a year, he was doing well. Well, I'd been interested since I was a boy in lead mining in the region run by the French. My people were the first, except the French, to come into that section. They were pioneering Scottish people from the Carolinas who followed Daniel Boone west. I can recall often, as a little boy, helping my father drive hogs for sale to the miners. And the French would mine in little shallow diggings, and when they'd get out a few 100 pounds of ore, I'd see them sell it, so of course I knew there was money in it. And by and by, I got so good at finding ore that the Indians thereabout called me boy that earth talks to. Later, to discharge my father's debts, I purchased some mining property and made some increase. I always had to have it my own way, or not at all. And that's been my disposition throughout my life. So I mined away and ran the farm and Also ran a little store out on the public road called the Old Springfield. When news came of gold in California, I recollect talking it over with my mother. And I told her they were making $40 and $50 a day. And it seemed pretty hard pulling here. And she said that if they were doing that, well, she had no doubt I'd make something too. I had already a pretty fair success in life. So I was able in a few months to get my affairs in order to care for my family. I got everything together and was able to get off in the spring of 1850. The wagon had gone on before, some 10 days. We went on horseback. Mother and sister rode along with me for a couple of days. Nothing would have induced me to leave them the way I did, except for pride. I felt it in my bones. I felt it in my bones. Our party was about 15 from everywhere. The only mishap I encountered was a touch of cholera that overtook us near Fort Kearney. After we started on again, after a couple of days, I took a chill. I recollect the grass was about 6 feet high, and I thought if they would only let me lie there, I'd give anything. I had a little bit of brandy with me, and I took a drink of that, and afterwards I felt a little better. The next day was pretty well. I always had plenty to eat, never had any sickness until we came to the desert about Humboldt, Nevada, where I was nearly broken up with an attack of fever. When we got to California, I had only a 5-franc piece left. First place I stopped at was the other side of the mountains near Hangtown, now called Placerville. A fella pointed out from an elevation where they were washing out gold a little bit south, a place called Jackass Gulch. No relation to either of us, Sam. You were there too, weren't you, one time? Named for a poor beast that was mistaken by a miner for a bear and subsequently shot. Well, we rested there for about a week. I had just got over the fever and couldn't do much. We discovered a quartz mill where some people before us had set up a mill and started working. And we've discovered that it was very rich, free gold and quartz. Well, we made a trade for that mill and went to work. We made a little money, but it soon played out. 1852 was a very hard year. We had a hard time of it. We couldn't do much because there was so much snow on the ground. And so we went on until 1866, sometimes making a little and sometimes losing. I never had much success at placer mining. I tried my hand at shopkeeping in Sacramento and Nevada City. Even ran a theater there for a time. In 1867, I went into quartz mining. My associates and I got a good gold mine near Grass Valley. Set up a mill and made some money out of it. We ran that mill until 1859, when the Washoe excitement came, over on the Nevada side. I went over there and spent a couple of months. You know, a strange thing I recollect. As I was riding along, I stopped and got down off my horse and sat down on a log and considered whether I should go forward or return. I thought it was about 100 miles to the mountains, and this seems like a wild goose chase amongst the Indians. However, I soon had my mind made up and went on at a gallop. When I got up on Mount Davidson, I saw below me a tent where some people were working. That was the Comstock. So I went back and sold out what I had in the Lee Compton, borrowed some money, and I went back and took a share in the Ophir mine. Stayed there until spring. Meantime, I heard about a mine where, when they were digging down, they found a black sulfur silver. The gold was in that. And they were breaking it up and throwing the rich silver away. Well, I got a piece of this that had been melted and sent it to an assayer. He told me that it was worth about $3,000 a ton. The fellow who was digging it out said there was a lot of the stuff. So I said, all right, I'm going over there. So I knocked around a bit, talked to a fellow about taking an interest in it. We worked away till we got out about 45 tons. Some said it was no good. No one would believe it was silver. It looked so much like lead. Well, the fact it hadn't been refined and there was a good deal of lead in it. We hired some mules to get the stuff down into San Francisco. And the German there built a furnace and smelted the stuff, and we hauled it round to the mint. After paying 25 cents a pound to get it over and $450 a ton for smelting, we cleared $80,000 for that lot. Then the excitement commenced. That was along about March 1860. Many's the time, Sam, I've thought of those days. Many's the time. When the Paiute Indians War broke out, I had to sell my mules. The Indians killed 65 out of 100 in Mid Lake, and were raising the very dickens with us. It cost us a good deal of money. I had to sell off some of my ground. My mother wrote me that she was sick and asked me to come home. So I left for Missouri shortly after I received a letter. Stayed there about 2 years. After my mother died, I married my neighbor, Phoebe Apperson, my dear puss. We returned to California by way of Panama. My son Will was born in San Francisco, 1863. I started up the Washoe Mill again and went on there mostly till 1866. Oh, those were hard days, Sam, in the mountains without my babies. As a man without a wife and a boy is just about no man at all. I quit the Comstock in 1867 and went into other things. I had always been interested in democratic politics in California. And to that end, I picked up the Examiner newspaper. After the war, the Democratic Party needed a political organ to get its platforms and its candidates known. But we were very much in the minority in those days. Well, we got the word out, and it was a good paper when I got good people in place, and I enjoyed reading it. But it bled money. My boy Will is running it now. Looks to make some money out of it in short order. He is about the hardest worker that I've ever known. I got a seat in the State Assembly in 1865, but I found myself getting restless. I began buying up ranching property near San Simeon. Better part of 3 old Mexican land grants eventually. I raised my beloved racehorses there to this day. I put in a pier in a sheltered cove. Steamships stopped there now. That was the beginning of the dairy business in that region. I had some real estate around San Francisco. Built a little racetrack, the Bayview. And I bought timber property in Siskiyou and Shasta, as well as extensive ranching properties in the Southwest and Mexico. I lost $92,000 in Idaho mining. So then I went down into eastern Nevada, Eureka, Pioche. I hate that miserable place, Sam. Never had so much trouble with litigations in all my life. In all, I expect I about broke even there. Then I went to Salt Lake, where there was great excitement about the biggest mine in the world. Well, I looked at it, and some others did too, and it was a failure. And then I saw a little mine, where a fellow was digging down a hole about 4 feet square. He said, "I've had a chance to make a stake 3 times since I came here, and I'm going to have to get some money out of this now. I am going to sell." Well, I dug down a while and took a sample, and without thinking about it further, I decided to give him $30,000. That was the Ontario silver mine. From that 30,000, everything else came. The Ontario has netted us so far about 14 million. And you know, Sam, I tried hard to sell that mine back during the panic of 1873, before it was producing. But there were no takers. Phoebe and my boy Will were on a long trip to Europe. Things were flatter than they'd been since '66, and there was no sale in the way of anything for mines or land. So I suppose it's better sometimes we don't get what we think we want. I heard about gold in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Now, my partner, J.B. Hagan, back in San Francisco, said it was too distant. He wasn't interested. The gold rush there had started in 1875, the year after Custer's expedition had discovered that there was gold. Well, the Sioux and the Cheyenne went on the warpath in '76 over it. Custer's little band was wiped out. So as much as a man's life was worth to go there. The next spring, I sent a man to arrange to bond a mine and arrived myself in March. I wired Hagan that we must sell all or buy the control. For though it was a very big mine, it was low grade and had to be worked cheaply. And on a large scale, it was no good. Everybody was losing money with small mines. So we bought all 250 side claims, about 2,600 acres. We called the mine the Homestake. We bought the water rights. I got some springs and worked them all together into a point. And after a while, I got them all into one creek. Now we get a couple thousand from the cities and towns there, and we're able to use the water for running our mills. Of course, we've got a railroad, and that pays too. I heard about the Anaconda mine from Marcus Daly, who was a spotter of mines as a profession. He had bonded a little silver mine in Montana and wanted me to come in. Well, I did. And after he sank a shaft of some considerable depth and struck copper, I knew it was rich ore and we'd make a lot of money out of it. Well, the price of copper kept dropping. And it took the silver ore to make it pay. Then we had a big fire. Wiped out all our buildings. Raised the dickens with us generally. Cost us a great deal of money. But we kept buying up claims and opening out. And everything's running splendidly now. The Anaconda and the Homestake will produce for 100 years. I've been involved in a great number of mining explorations other than this and lost a good deal of money by them. The biggest loss was in the Bodie district, $900,000. The general character of my mining has been to get the ore out, reduce it to bullion, and sell it. I never sold any stock in any mine that wasn't in operation. On the whole, I think mining's about the best business of all. Oh, of course, there might be some chances in some railroad scheme that are better, but for regular business, I think I would prefer mining. Of course, farming is hardly a business at all. I think I can claim to know all about rocks. This knowledge, however, I did not obtain from books. It is altogether practical. I was naturally a mineralogist, I think. I suppose I was born that way. The knowledge seems to me instinctive. But you know, Sam, it's a curious thing that I have been all over this country, and I have never had an Indian molest me in my life. And I've been all over the Western Mountains, from British Columbia to Mexico. And also, I have never been stage robbed in my life. I never suffered any loss in that way, despite having $20,000 to $30,000 about my person many times. I hardly know how to account for this, except for luck and destiny. I knew Bill Hickok before he was shot in Deadwood. Wyatt Earp was my bodyguard in Tucson, Arizona, so I have lived an adventurous life. I ran a spirited campaign for the nomination for governor of California against George Stoneman, Civil War general, nearly won. I never could make a speech and let anyone write it out for me. If a man wrote me a splendid speech, I'd make a botch of it. But if I thought it out, I could do it well, and everyone would know it was me. I was rewarded with a seat in the Senate. I sit on mining and railroad and water committees. As to work in the Senate, I think I take my fair share. And while I'm here, I work at it every day. I don't speak much, but I do my fair share in the committee rooms. Of course, I have been called a rude, crude miner who spells bird B-U-R-D. Now I ask you, Sam, if that don't spell bird, what do it spell? As to the future of the state of California, I think it is the best and most congenial country I ever saw, taking its soil and climate and everything. The elements are in our favor in California, and for that reason, I think it's going to be one of the most densely populated regions in the United States. And now, Sam, this old cuss is going to be skinned alive if I'm any later to Phoebe's dinner party. You take care, Sam Clemens, and remember what I've always told you, don't lose your sense of humor.